Openings is one of the crucial aspects of a chess game. Although it is said to start off, you should learn tactics and middle game. But a good knowledge of opening and some rules if we follow, we can get quite a nice position at the start of the game. So hi, welcome to this video. I am Karan Parikh and have been playing chess since 7 years. And I will be your guide for this video. In this video, we are going to be focusing on some basic rules of chess opening, followed by a general setup you would want, and then how and where you should start the attack. So without wasting any further time, let's get started. Okay, so firstly, out of the many things I have decided, we are going to talk about central control. So what is central control? In the game of chess, these 4 squares in the center are very important for both the sides. These are known as the central squares, and both the sides decide or strategize how to control the center fastest. So our plan in the opening should be aimed towards controlling the center. For example, we start the game with the move pawn to e4. What does this do? It controls the e4 as well as the d5 square. Correct. So this move controls 2 of the major central squares. Another opening is pawn to d4. This controls the d4 as well as the e5 squares. So this is also a very nice move to start the game. The other moves includes knight to f3 because the knight can control the d4 and the e5 squares. And similarly, we can play our other knight to c3 to start the game because it controls the e4 and the d5 squares. So these were one of the 4 opening moves that controls the center directly. Of course, in higher levels, we can expect to control the center via the sides. But to start off, we'll try to control the center directly with the pawns like this or with the knights. So this was about the center control. Okay, so the second thing is development. What is development actually? Development means that we should use every single piece of the chessboard that they are providing us and utilize the entire power so as to execute a checkmate to the opponent. Okay, to give an example is once we start the opening with the move pawn to e4. Now, what should we do in the next move? We should bring out our pieces. We'll bring our knight to f3 because it also controls the center, as well as we are developing the knight. Then we can develop the other knight. Then we can develop the bishop. We can move the pawn and develop the other bishop. So these are all the moves which helps in development, and now you can see we have so much space. This bishop controls so many squares, this knight controls so many squares, and so on. So development helps us to bring out more pieces as well as give us more space in the game. So this also leads us to the next rule, that is the general rules. We have 4 small rules that we should keep in mind every single game. The first move is do not bring your queen out too early. So this was the part of development. In development, you want to develop your pawns and then the minor pieces first, and then go on to the major pieces. So you bring out the pawn, you bring out the knight, you bring out the bishop like this, then you try to castle, and then you try to bring out the queen. You should not start the game by playing pawn up and then bring the queen directly and roam around the board with the queen, because queen is a valuable piece, and if it is attacked, then you have to keep moving it and keep saving it, and that will give your opponent so much time, whereas you are just moving such a heavy piece. Correct? So you should not be aiming to take out the queen very early out of the game. The second general rule is that do not play the same piece twice. So once you start the game, then you bring out the knight. Now you should not be like you'll move this knight once again. you have to try to bring everything out and not move the same piece twice. So this is just a general rule. Of course it can be violated, but to play a decent game, you can keep this in mind, that moving a piece 2 times in the opening itself is not so very good. Moving on, the third thing that is stated is you should the knights on the rim is dim. So this is a quote that suggests that you should not put the knights on the rim of a chessboard, as in the edges, which is the A file and the H file for us. So starting the game by putting, or in the middle of the game, if you bring out the knight in the edge, then it is not so good. Logically it fits into it, because if the knight is developed to the edge, then it controls very little squares. You can see it controls only 2 of the squares and none of them are central. But if we develop the knight to f3 instead, we control 1, 2, 3 and 4 squares, and out of those, 2 of them are the central squares. So now you can only decide that the knight is good on f3 or it is good on h3, correct? Of course the knight does not move like this, but for example purpose. So yes, now I think you might have gotten an idea that you should only develop your knight to the center. Only if some capture occurs at the edge, then you can of course recapture and put your knight to the edge. So that was the third rule, and the fourth rule is also about the knight. It says that the knights should be before the bishops, should be developed before the bishops. This means is you should take out the knights. Okay, my bad, I'll just do it once again. Okay, this means that you should bring the knights before the bishops, and there is a simple logic. You know that the knight should not go to the edge, and of course if you put the knight here, then your bishop will be blocked. So you have only one square for the knight, that is f3 for this knight and c3 for this knight, correct? So you know where your knight is supposed to be. But talking about the bishop has so many squares. It can go to e2, it can go to c4, it can go to b5. It has 3 very good squares to go. So before deciding this, let the game go on, let yourself develop the knights first, and then decide that if you want to go to the defense and play bishop e2, or you want to attack and go bishop to c4 or bishop to b5, correct? So the rule is simple: knights before bishops. So these were the 4 general rules that you should keep in your mind. Now moving on, the weak squares in your opponent's territories. This is also a key point to discuss on, is that you develop everything, you take the central control, you keep all the general rules in mind. But now what to do? Where you should attack on your opponent, and what should be your aim? How to reach checkmate? So to ponder on that, I'll suggest that you should think which of the squares in your opponent's territory is the weakest. If you see only one square, that is the f7 square, is very weak, because it is defended by only the king, and the king is very vulnerable, correct? All other squares, let's say this pawn is defended by the rook, this is defended by the bishop, this is of course the weakest, this is defended by 4 of the pieces, the king, bishop, knight and all. This similarly with the 4 pieces, this is defended by the queen and so on. But the f7 square is the weakest just because of the fact it is defended by 1 piece, and that piece is very important for them and for us also. So keeping that in mind, for your opponent this square is the weakest, and in our territory this square, the f2 square, is the weakest. So we should always be careful also about some attack coming on us on the f2 square. Also, if you want to start the attack, the very easy attack I like to show you is to bring out your knight, bring out your bishop, and then go in like this, of course if the position allows you to, and you attack this pawn with 2 of the pieces. Also you can try to bring out your queen and also make 1 more attacker. Of course, black will try to defend it, but if allowed, these can be done. Okay, so the f7 square majorly can be attacked with the bishop because it's a long range piece, and also by the knight because it can hop directly in 2 moves and attack the f7 square. So this is one of the plan you got, correct? Now the next thing I would like to tell is the Rooks Connect. What does this mean? This means that once you are done developing, let's say I'll play random moves and develop all my pieces. Let's the knight comes out, the bishop comes out, we castle, and now we bring out our queen. So when we develop everything and the queen is moved, and you can see the rooks are connected to each other, they can see themselves, then at this point you can say that the opening phase is over. When the rooks are connected, it starts the middle game because everything is connected. Now we have to develop a plan for a game and you have to start the attack, but the opening phase is complete. So you should always aim to bring out all your pieces as soon as possible and connect the rooks, correct? So this was about connecting the rooks. Now after talking everything, if we take everything into consideration, one of the best setups for a beginner I would like to suggest, if your opponent allows, is this. You bring your 2 pawns to the center. Of course the order can vary because your opponent will is mainly going to push this pawn right here, and you cannot like start of course with this move, correct? Of course it's also an opening, but yeah. So a good opening I like to suggest is bring out your pawns first, control the center with the pawns, then bring out the 2 knights, controlling the center more. Okay, ignore the arrows, but yeah, control the center more. Then you bring out the bishop like this because they are long range, they help you in starting the attack, as well as they also control the central squares just like this. And then you either castle and then move your queen, then you bring the rooks, and this is one of the ideal setup that I personally learned when I started playing chess. So you can see everything is developed, your king is safe, your rooks are very active, your queen and the bishop are batteried along this diagonal, all the pieces are seeing the center, and we have the entire power. So you should aim this setup. Of course your opponent would not allow you to do this, but until and unless you are able to do this, you should try your best to achieve this setup, correct? This is like a castle around your king. So this was a default setup for your opening preparation. So with this, I think this is enough for one who is starting to play chess to know about opening, where we talked about the central control, development, some general rules which included: do not play the same piece twice, knights on the rim are dim, do not bring your queen out too early, and knights before bishops. These are the 4 general rules. Then we have the weak squares, that is the f2 square and the f7 square. Then we have Rooks Connect. When the opening phase is complete, you should try to connect the rooks. And then at the last we saw this default opening setup. So with all these pointers, I think this was for the video. I hope you learned something new from it. If you did, put your comments in the comment section, hit the like button, and meet you in the 4th video of this series, where we'll talk about the middle game. That is going to be very exciting. So yes, I will take your leave. Stay safe, play chess, and keep learning. Bye.